Instance methods. In this video, we will continue learning different ways to add behavior to our classes. In the previous video, we gave our rectangle class behavior by giving it the ability to get and set the values of its instance variables. That being said, objects have the ability to do more than just get and set values. For example, we could also give our rectangle class the ability to compute its own perimeter and area. How would we do that? Well, to start things off, let's first clear off the screen. Once again, all previously written constructors, getter, and setter methods assume they're still a part of the program. We're just not going to show it on the screen to give us more space to write. So, computing the perimeter. First, the method will be public because all instance methods are public. Of course, there are exceptions to every rule, but for the most part, it is always safe to assume when creating an instance method that it'll be public. Next, the return type. Since we're computing the perimeter and we want to return that value, and we know that value is going to be an integer, we're going to say the return type for this method will be int. Then the name, we'll simply call it get perimeter, since that's what the method is doing. It's computing and returning the perimeter. It's getting the perimeter of the rectangle. Next, parameters. What parameters does this method need? What data needs to be given to this method for it to function? Well, it doesn't need any additional data because since all it's doing is getting the perimeter, all the information it needs is already in the instance variables. Thus, an empty parameter list will be fine. Then, in the body of the method, we're simply going to compute and return the perimeter of the rectangle. Now, if you don't already know the formula for the perimeter of a rectangle off the top of your head, a simple Google search will get it for you. You could simply Google, what is the formula for the perimeter of a rectangle? When you do that, you will see that the formula is simply 2 times the length plus 2 times the width. And that completes the method. Now that the method is complete, we can now go to our main method and use it. For example, suppose I create a rectangle with a length of 3 and a width of 5. I can then compute the perimeter of that rectangle and store it inside a variable. And thus, when I print out that variable, I get 16 as my output, since 3 times 2 is 6, 5 times 2 is 10, and the sum of 6 and 10 is 16. Now, let's compute the area. Once again, the method will be public. The return type will be int, since its job will be to compute and return the area, which will be of type integer. For the name, we'll simply call it getArea, since that's what it's doing. It's getting the area of the rectangle. And then once again, for the parameter list, we'll keep it empty, since all the information it needs is already inside the instance variables. It does not need any additional data. Then inside the body, we're going to compute and return the area. What's the area of a rectangle? Length times width. Once again, if you don't know this off the top of your head, you can Google it. Simply ask Google, what is the formula for the area of a rectangle? And you will get length times width. Now that the method is complete, we can use it inside our main method. If I create a rectangle with a length of 3 and a width of 5, then I call the getArea method on it and store the result inside of a variable. When I print that out, I get 15 for my output, since 3 times 5 is 15. Okay. The last method we'll demonstrate is a method called grow. And the job of this grow method will be to grow the rectangle both horizontally and vertically by a certain amount. Once again, as with all instance methods, this method will be public. The return type will be void. The reason we're making it void because we don't intend for the method to return anything. Its job is simply to modify the instance variables. Its job is simply to modify the length and the width. That's it. It's not giving any values back. Then for the name, we'll simply call it grow because that's what it's doing. It's growing the rectangle. Then for the parameters, since its job is to grow the rectangle both horizontally and vertically, we're going to need 2 parameters. We're going to need 2 parameters of type int. The first int will tell us how much we want the length to grow by, and the second parameter will tell us how much we want the width to grow by. And also take note that the reason I named the first integer v is because it represents the vertical increase, and the second parameter is named h because it represents the horizontal increase. Now, of course, you don't have to use these precise names, just whatever names you choose for your perimeter. Make sure that there's a logic behind it. Make sure that the names are representative of the purpose of that perimeter in some way. Then, inside the body of the method, we're going to use those parameters to increase the length of width. We're going to increase the length by amount v, and we're going to increase the width by amount h. And now that the method is complete, we can now invoke it inside our main method. Suppose I create a rectangle with a length of 3 and a width of 5. Then in the next line, I invoke the grow method. I say grow the length by amount 2 and grow the width by amount 4. Then when I print out the length and the width in the following lines, I get 5 and 9 as my output, since 3 plus 2 is 5 and 5 plus 4 is 9.